What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality podcast. I'm your host. I'm Caitlin Kenneth Smith, and today we have a very special guest on the episode. We have Jared Hamilton. We're going to talk all about the science of sabotage and how to stop it. But Jared, give the listeners a little bit of an intro on who you are before we get into everything.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on. So my name's Jared Hamilton. We were just talking about I'm from Indiana. Over here in the Midwest, it's a little cold, but the stuff that when it comes to intros are always interesting because I always think of it like a dating profile. Like, well, I'm a dog dad. I do this. I like long walks on the beach and playing with chainsaws or whatever. But no, when it comes to this kind of stuff, at the end of the day, it's really simple that I am fully convinced the reason where most people are not where they want to be has nothing to do with normal weight loss stuff. So I've spent the last, like at the time of recording this, like 13 or so years helping people get to the root cause of what's making weight loss impossible, which is specifically what I would label the inner game. Like I said, I've been a trainer in person, then transitioned my business online, and have literally been in the trenches with hundreds, if not thousands, of people by this point. And I am 100% convinced that our own psychology and inner game and headspace and subconscious patterns and programming is exactly why we're not where we want to be. So,
Mhm. I talk about that a lot with my clients too, how the inner work is more important, arguably, than the outer work sometimes, because the reality is, like, you can search Google and you can find all the information that you want about fitness and nutrition, but for some reason, so many people struggle with it. And that comes down to like that sabotage that we're going to talk about. Like, why do you feel like sabotage is so common, specifically in the fitness and nutrition space?
well, so I don't think it's just common here. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
From a principle standpoint, it's anything you want to achieve, we sabotage. Whether it be you're single and really want a partner, whether you are trying to make more money, whether you are trying to grow your relationships, whether you are trying to lose some weight. It's any time we try to achieve things, there is an underlying level of sabotage that wants to set in because from a psychological standpoint, our minds gravitate to what's most familiar at the end of the day. So if like you've been single your whole life and have said men are pigs or women are terrible, and then all of a sudden you have a great one in your life, it's the pattern is, oh, let me push them away because it goes against the normal familiar because our brains want to keep us safe. So at the end of the day, if that's the big thing is because most people to take it even deeper because I have sabotage really two of the main reasons for sabotage is number one it's pattern driven because the mind gravitates to what's familiar. So if you've been overweight your whole life and now you've lost some weight, you've spent more time being overweight, so that's safer to your brain. But then also, we sabotage to what we believe is true about ourselves. So, for example, if you have a belief of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy of happiness, well, then all of a sudden you lost weight and got a promotion at work. That is now a threat to that identity. So you have to mess it up. You have to
Hmm.
sabotage it. If you have a belief that all men are pigs or all women are cheaters or whatever, and you have a great one, that goes against that belief. And so you have to ruin it. So or this is when in weight loss we see if someone has the belief of, oh, I have to starve to lose weight, I have to suffer to lose weight, or losing weight is so hard for me. You sure as hell will lose weight, but it's going to be torture to make it happen because that's the only way to make that situation true in your brain. So we have to look at things from the pattern side as well as the belief and identity and the actual belief system side.
Hmm. When I heard you speak at the Hidden Summit retreat, you said a quote that really resonated with me and a lot of my clients who were actually there. And it was, you're not who you want to become, you're who you say you are, or something along that line. And that kind of
Hmm.
goes right into that. Like, you always say that you're the fat friend, or you always say that you're terrible at dieting, or whatever it is. So you're kind of gravitate towards exactly what you want. Is that what you mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, most people, our results are just congruent with who we believe we are. Right. That's what it is whatever you believe is true about yourself, your brain will now go to work 24/7 to find evidence to support it. So if I have forget weight loss for a second, if I have a belief that the world is a scary place and everyone's out to get you, I could find, and I walk out my front door, all I will see is terror. It's because my brain goes, oh, okay, that's what we believe. So let's find evidence to support that belief. We have this thing mentally called your reticular activating system. I talk about it with my clients a lot, your RAS for short, and it's your filter on life. Because if you didn't have a filtration system mentally, you would have a psychotic break, right? Everything that is going on, every sensory thing, what you see here, everything in front of you. I probably have 50 items on my desk right now between pens, means a book, a notebook with all words on it, a mouse, a couple flash drives. Like I have like probably 50 different things on my desk right now. So if I didn't have a filtration system about what's important,
Mhm.
um, then I would, your brain can't comprehend all that. So it's a filtration system to what is what you believe, because your brain is also about self-preservation. So if you have a belief of I'm not supposed to be happy, and then all of a sudden that's your belief, or I'm not good enough, or I'm a binger, or whatever it is, your brain is now using its RAS to find out what's true in reality, to keep you safe and to make sure that's true, to be in congruence with who you are. So it's why we have to be really careful about what we think, what we believe, and really take inventory over that, because at the end of the day, you have no responsibility to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago if you decide you want to change. But again, then that goes against the old belief systems, because the brain goes, well, we believe this for the last 20 years. And if we let go of that, we're going to die. Well, that's, of
Mhm.
course, the way your self preservation brain's going to view it, which is at the end of the day why we sabotage, why sabotage is here on every level of this transformation journey as a whole. So,
Yeah. What do you feel like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, "Oh shit, that's me." What are some of the most common triggers that kind of lead people to self-sabotage that you've seen?
results. The number one cause of, or the number one trigger for any sabotage pattern to set in that I've seen, is results. Think of it this way, like your sabotaging patterns is kind of like the thermostat on a wall. So if your thermostat is set at 70 degrees and your room heats up to 80, the thermostat goes, whoa, we're not supposed to be here, and it will cool the room off to the setting. So the whole role is, the thermostat's role is to regulate the room temperature to what the setting is. That's what happens with sabotage and belief systems and things like that. If you, if or even from a pattern perspective, if you've been, let's say, one way your whole life, if you've always been 40 pounds overweight, and then all of a sudden you lose said 40 pounds or 30 pounds, that part of you goes, hang on, this isn't how we're used to being. We're off here. Let's regulate back to where we were. Now, here's the thing though, and I had a chat with a client about this the other day. Most people think sabotage is this like abundantly clear, um, goes against logic thing. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to smash the family size bag of Doritos and I know I shouldn't. Or
Hmm.
I know I need to go to the gym, I just don't want to. Where it's a little bit more conscious. It's a little bit more like, that's abundantly clear, you're doing it. But sabotage is the other way around. It's so sneaky and it's so legitimate. It's, you do really well, then your kids get sick and then you can't go to the gym. It's, you're doing really well and you're working with your coach, but then all of a sudden a bill happens to hit and money's really tight. Now you want to cancel coaching.
Hmm.
It's things are, you're finally starting to see some progress, but now you have the vacation and the work trip, and then you have to now travel across the country to see your grandma. It's those kind of things. It seems random, and it's like, ha, woe is me. I can't believe this is happening. As soon as I start making progress, it's pretty calculated. It's how the pattern of self-sabotage works. It's almost as if there's intelligence behind it, but that's just how it works. Is every time you start to do well, something always happens.
Yeah.
But usually the trigger is progress, because just like your thermostat, if the room is set at 70 and the room temperature is 70, thermostat shuts off. It doesn't have to do anything because it's good. Same thing here. It's why you always sabotage right back to where you were. You don't sabotage 50 pounds over where you were. You sabotage to like 5 or 10 pounds of where you were. You sabotage back to exactly square one, not square negative 10. So,
Hmm. Yeah. So do you find that like when life gets a little bit more stressful and we have maybe an obstacle thrown in our direction when we're seeing results, that's kind of when things start to get backtracked a little bit? Or can it
yeah,
just be completely random?
both. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
all the above. But there's like a whole system with sabotage that I've been working on. So like if we have self-sabotage, that's when like the bad things are happening. That's when like, oh, I gained the weight back. Or like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm in the middle of my actions are falling off right now. Or oh, I haven't been to the gym because life has been too, like that's in the middle of sabotage. The precursor to sabotage, though, is what I the way I teach is I label it drifting, because you drift into a sabotage because in a lot of cases you don't, it's like you don't see your hair growing out right now, right? But we know it is growing. That's how a lot of sabotaging behaviors are. It's like you start to just slowly drift and you have no idea. It's like
Hmm.
it's like if a plane makes a 2 degree turn or a 2 degree change in flight. Well, when you're 30,000 feet up in the air going 800 miles an hour, you don't feel that, but you'll end up thousands of miles off course at scale. If you're aiming at Hawaii, you'll end somewhere else in the ocean at just
Hmm.
2 degrees with scale. It's the same thing here. going, oh, you know what? I'm going to go from tracking calories to rounding calories. Over the course of 6 months, you will be in a completely different place. Going from going from keeping your promises to yourself to like, maybe hit or miss if I feel like it. That's starting to drift. Or there's so many ways people do it, but then we drift before we sabotage. We start to have these small things we don't think matter, and they do matter. It would be like, imagine if you started, instead of brushing your teeth twice a day every day, you started once a day. It's not that. You're still brushing your teeth, but
Hmm.
that would absolutely make a difference in your oral health and your breath and all that. It's those kind of changes that lead up to sabotage.
And it's one of those things that you don't necessarily notice until it's almost too late.
Mm-hmm. It's death by a thousand cuts. It
Hmm.
wasn't the gash in your neck that made you bleed out in 10 seconds. It was a paper cut, another paper cut, another paper. It's literally death by a thousand cuts. You don't feel like it's that big of a deal, but all of a sudden it's like, wait, why am I? I'm not where I need to be. But it's scary because it leads people to this facade of I'm doing everything right, but I'm not making progress. I had actually had a call with a client the other day who when she in her check-in, she was actually a little bit upset because she's like, all this life stuff is just hitting me, da 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 da. And she was actually a little bit triggered. But then by the time we had our call, like a day later, she had calmed down and she's like, I literally thought I'm not sabotaging, but I'm absolutely sabotaging. I thought it was this, but no, I'm literally just not being consistent and I'm making excuses.
Hmm.
Like, that's awesome. Like, great that you came to that realization before we even talked. Because when a coach says that, you sound like an asshole.
Yep.
But it's those kind of things is how it can absolutely tamper stuff.
So are sabotages and excuses kind of on the same exact line?
That's a great question. Yes and no, they can be. Not all. Okay, not all excuses can be sabotage, but not all sabotage are excuses. For
Mhm.
example, mom of six having all her kids get sick and her husband's traveling for work and she can't go to the gym. That is not an excuse
Right.
by
That's
any
pretty
means.
valid.
Right, right, right. Like that, and that's how a lot of sabotage presents itself. Is it's so legitimate. It's like no, like I had a client that just went on a family vacation. As soon as they got from the family vacation, she had a work trip and she drives for her work, and then she had her family take care of when she got back. That's not an excuse by any means, but it goes back to where it does become an excuse is when we use one uncontrollable to derail the rest of our controllables.
Hmm.
Right. Like I have had, I mean, I've been doing this for long enough. I have had clients, like if I had someone paint me the worst case scenario of a situation, I bet I could find a worse one a client's been through. Like the dad that has to handle his three kids while his wife is stuck in the hospital getting cancer treatments,
Hmm.
or this client with lupus and she can't even walk to the mailbox because she's in so much pain. Like, but at the end of the day, there's still even with crazy situations like that, there are still levels of controllables where most people sabotage is they take one thing that's not going very well and then they let that set the precedence for everything else. I'm too busy to go to the gym, so why even try to eat right? Versus we have to eat and drink to survive. So you can always stop when you're full. You can always not say fuck it and binge. You can always do breath work and regulate your emotions. You can always just make the best decision with what you have. But then this leads to the next sabotaging issue. That very balanced mentality goes against the belief in pattern of I'm an all or nothing person. I'm a perfectionist. I'm all in or all out. Because again, to make this thing full circle, if someone has life happen and then they normally either wave the all or nothing perfectionist flag, all in, all out, whatever, and they're like, no, I'm going to be a person of balance. I'm going to do my best. That goes against the pattern and it goes against their belief system.
Hmm.
So of course they sabotage and then they just say fuck it and continue to make bad decisions. So this is why it all comes down to what are your patterns that we need to stop, and what are your belief systems specifically about yourself, the kind of person you are from an identity perspective, and are those both in alignment with what you're trying to get and do?
Hmm. That's probably one of the most common things I see as a coach is like that all or nothing mindset that really derails people the most. So once somebody recognizes that they're sabotaging themselves, right? Once they kind of have that epiphany, what's the first step that they can use to try to break that cycle?
We have to put an action that is a pattern break, because
Hmm.
I always say inner work is two parts. It's new information and uncomfortable action in opposition of the old conditioning. As in, if your pattern is let's say you lose motivation and you say fuck it and you fall off and you just eat like an asshole. The new information is, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's wrong. That's not going to get me anywhere. But we can't information and intellectualize our way to inner work, right? We have to have the action piece in that as well. But the thing that actually rewrites mental software is you going against that. If the old pattern is I lose motivation, I fall off and don't do anything, you lose motivation and you follow the fucking plan. And then all of a sudden your brain going, what is going on?
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
not like us. Why are you doing that? Oh, maybe that's not who we are anymore. And that's when the neurological software starts to change. It's the same reason why we have to face a fear to get over the fear. You cannot pamphlet the fear of heights. You cannot read about the mental and emotional and psychological reasons you shouldn't be scared to jump out of a plane because your brain goes, we're gonna fucking die. So if you jump out of plane and you didn't die, your brain goes, huh, we were wrong. I guess we're not scared of heights anymore. It's because the body teaches the mind what to think. So when you are caught in this pattern of sabotage, we have to be aware of the pattern and then go against the pattern and then have time going against the old pattern. And your brain will eventually catch up to speed and go, oh, I guess that's not who we are anymore. Then the one thing that expedites this process is the results. If someone has a pattern of I'm scared of chocolate, once I start, I can't stop, and then I get them to lose weight eating chocolate, it expedites it even faster. So,
Mhm. So it's like breaking the habit of being yourself.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So with that, what do you feel like, what are some strategies that you've seen that have helped with people? Maybe some specific examples of like pattern breakers that people can implement.
So there's a framework that I teach my clients. I call it the stopping sabotage method specifically. Step one is this is outside of identity work because identity
Mhm.
work is its own thing. Like you need like we
Right.
could talk about that after. But step one is what's the pattern? You cannot escape a jail you don't know you're trapped in. And if you think you are the pattern, you're never going to break free from it. You have to realize, oh, I'm doing it again. But patterns always have a paper trail. Self sabotage has a paper trail. So I would say step one is what do you do every time? Over the last 5 years, you've tried to diet, and every time you've fallen off, you've probably done 5 to 8 of the exact same things over and over again. As in, like maybe lost motivation, fell off, never made it past 30 days before life got busy, or the scale spiked and you said fuck it. The scale dropped and you said fuck it. Whatever the pattern is, write out on paper what always happens. Step two, because we need this is cumulative, we need the data. Step one, write out all the patterns, the top 5 or 6 things. Step two, I call it if this, then what. Now, patterns are going to come around again. If it's like I had a client of mine who started and she said in the last 10 years, she's never made it more than 30 days on any program before throwing in the towel. I go, well, it is going to be a hellacious 31 day 31 with me because that pattern is going to come to kick you in the teeth and we're not going to let it happen. And it's going to feel like a drug addiction. It is going to feel like everything is going to go wrong that day, and you are going to want to throw in the towel. And I forewarned her. So if this, then what? If this happens, then what are you going to do? You need to have the plan ready to go before you go into the emotionally charged place. I tell clients this is the same reason you probably have the sex, drugs, and peer pressure talk with your kid way before you need to have it, is because you don't want them back behind the school, behind the dumpster, deciding whether they're going to take the drugs, get peer pressured, or whatever. You want them so ready to go this way. They make their decision not in that emotionally charged place. So it's the same thing for you. We don't want to wait till we're sabotaging to have the plan. So if you know, hey, here are the top 5 ways I sabotage, then create if this, then what? If I lose motivation, then what? If I want to throw in the towel and quit, then what? If the scale spikes and I throw an adult hissy fit, then what am I going to do? And then create these little mini plans for the 5 or 6 things that you do every single time. Then step three, anticipate and execute. The hardest part, it's coming. It's like I always say, like this is maybe a very interesting analogy. I always say sabotage is like a woman's period. You know it's coming. You know exactly what it looks like, feels like, how it presents itself. So you basically have some stuff in place. You have your feminine hygiene products on deck. You know that you may be emotional. You're probably going to have the snacks that you want. You know you don't want to be out of ibuprofen. Like you have a little bit of a level of that, but you also understand it's part of being a woman. It's part of a healthy biological process. If you don't have your period, you're probably panicking, right? But you know it's what happens every single month. So I don't view sabotage as any different. It happens every time you set some goals, every time you go out to accomplish them. And it's a very, instead of a biological process, it's a psychological process. So you need to have a framework of things in place so you're not taken off guard by it. And then anticipate and execute. So then, oh, there it is. Implement your plan from step one, and that's it.
Hmm. So it's such an interesting concept for you to get into this because I feel like so many fitness and nutrition coaches, they just like focus on, fitness and nutrition. Here's a training plan, here's a nutrition guide. Let me just help you along the way. How did you initially get into like the science of sabotage and all this like identity work and everything like that?
So, I'm right now I'm 33. I started studying personal development and psychology and some neuroscience in my early 20s,
Hmm.
just because I was fascinated by it. And it was selfishly. I had no intention of bringing this into like coaching people or whatever. It was all I wanted to make me better. But then actually I started as I started coaching, what I loved and how I felt about the coaching started to drop a little bit. I started to become a little bit heavier mentally and emotionally about everything. Like I was grading people results, it was working, but something didn't feel quite right. I felt like something was missing. So I did what I preach and I go, get quiet, let's go inward, let's get curious and see what happens. Because during this time period, also got heavy into personal development, heavy into psychology, heavy into the science of the way that your brain works, and heavy into therapy and my own journey, my own exploration of my darkness, my own questioning of beliefs, my own identity stuff. Have gone through two therapists, like gone to like spiritual retreats, like the whole 9 yards of my own stuff, and realized how radical these concepts change everything. So and then I realized at the end of the day, like we have to go deeper to get these results. And what solidified it for me, whenever I felt not great about everything and a little bit heavier, what happened was I noticed a pattern because again, it comes down to what are the patterns that happen. And I noticed I was starting to do this work with clients before I ever talked about it because it was required to get their results. What I mean by that is I would have like I was at this time I was just the sustainable fat loss guy. I just showed people how to work out a couple times, drink wine, eat donuts, and look good naked. Like nothing crazy, which still produced great results, but it just felt like something was missing. Well, let's say Mrs. Jones would come in and work with me and I'm ready to take her into fat loss. But then I'm like, oh, shoot, she binge eats every third day because her relationship with food is terrible. Okay, fuck. Well, excuse me, I know I can't get her to where she wants to be. She signed up to me for me to get her the results. I can't get her results in following the program if she's in binge eating. But then because of what I learned about sustainable fat loss and the way the brain works, I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix her relationship with food real quick and get her to stop binge eating, get her on the fast track to fat loss. Cool. Mrs. Jones is good. Then another client would be working with, and let's say Mrs. Smith, and she's doing great, and but she's now subconsciously sabotaging because her identity's all fucked. And I'm like, okay, she's subconsciously sabotaging because her patterns and belief systems are off. So it doesn't matter what I have her do. Okay, I need to go rewrite, help her change her identity to something that serves her, fix her story, change her state. Okay, get her good. Now she's on the fast track to fat loss. And I'm like, oh, this is everyone. Everyone has these
Hmm.
issues. But then this is also my 10 out of a 10. I went from loving talking about fat loss, calorie deficits, and macros to hating to talk about those things. And all I wanted to talk about is this deeper stuff. And then ironically, no one talks about it in our industry at all.
Yeah.
So I had this epiphany of like, man, if I could just bring inner work and mental and emotional stuff and sustainable results in one place, that's just kind of what I would like to do. But no one's ever done that. Oh shit, no one's ever done that. And so then I got excited, but then got hit by the imposter syndrome train of like, who the fuck am I? But I'm like, it's fine. This is what feels 10 out of a 10. So that's when dieting from the inside out became a thing. And then now to date, I have like psychologists and PhDs in science or in psychology like hire me. It's the craziest thing ever. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you feel like because like as you were talking about that, do you feel like it's impossible for somebody to achieve the results that they want to if they do not um at least attempt to fix their identity and limiting beliefs?
100%. Or at least let me caveat that they good luck keeping them. You might
Yeah.
have a good month. You might get them and go, woo, I made it. But I mean, it's 90% of our actions are subconscious and it's in subconscious in alignment with our identity. So, I mean, imagine if someone took, if that's 90% of your day to day, I mean, you're good for 10%. But like, imagine if you had a 90% pay cut and then you're going to try to save money. It's just not going to work. So you're not going to have long lasting results unless you fix your inner game identity and all those things.
Hmm. How does somebody start with the fixing their identity?
You have to decide who, so there's two parts to it. You have to decide either who you are or who you're not. They go kind of hand in hand.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, most people's identity and their belief systems, they didn't actually put in place. Somehow you stay who you are because somehow you got here. Right. Like, oh, I've always struggled with binge eating, so I must be a binger. Or, oh, my mom struggled with hers weight, so I'm going to be, I'm just like my mom. well, and I'm fat or whatever, whatever the identity is. Or like, let's say you had a dad that was an asshole. Oh, I'm just, people say I look just like my dad. I'm just like my dad. I must be, oh, I'm just an asshole. It's in my blood. Like most people's identity and stories just, um, they didn't put in place there. So you need to decide who you actually are. Um, from your perspective and from what you actually want. Because at the end of the day, we don't get what just a result. We have to become a person who gets that result. So if you say, I want to lose 30 pounds, it's not how do I lose 30 pounds? It's who do I have to become who loses 30 pounds? So you can go, all right, well, what tangible results do I want? I want to be free around food. I don't want to binge anymore. I want to lose 30 pounds and I want to be strong as fuck. Okay, who do I have to become who does all those things? Then once you get clear on who that person is, what their character traits are, who they the personality of that person, then you need to just do what they do. Like you have to operate your actions in congruence with that version. And then one day you essentially just walk into them. Because if most people's actions are in congruence with who they are now, then they wonder why they keep their shitty results. But it's almost like when you go to sleep, you have to be asleep before you fall asleep. You have to literally lay there, fake asleep. You close your eyes while you're awake, and then you eventually drift off to sleep. It's kind of the same thing. I'm not saying just fake it, but I'm saying you have to be that person. What would that person do? It's like if your kid had terrible grades and they want to get a scholarship to go to football to the football school, and they have terrible grades. They say, well, how do I get good grades? You have to become a good student. Oh, well, what do good students do? They show up to class early. They sit in the front. They do their homework. They ask questions. They have a great habit routine around their studies. And if you just be a good student, you get what good students get. Well, if you want these results, you have to start operating in congruence with that version of you who gets those results. And then before you know it, you just go, oh, wait, when did this happen? And then you kind
Yeah.
of just walk into it. But at the same time, a lot of times, a concept I've been working on isn't just like who are you? Because that can be a really daunting question. Like
Mhm.
I remember at the Hidden Summit retreat, I talked about like the coma letter and all that stuff, and it's really powerful. But it's sometimes it's hard deciding who you are right now. Sometimes you can go what I call this the back door to identity work. You can decide who you're not. It's kind of like in school with a multiple choice when you have no idea. If you can
Mhm.
eliminate some, it makes the decision making process so much easier,
Right.
right? So if I would say if you don't know who you are, cool. Who are you not? Well, I'm not a person who hides their emotions with food. I'm not someone who is easily swayed just based on what I feel. I'm not someone who quits anymore. I'm not someone who, well, dope. If you just eliminate all those, it makes it really crystal clear or even a little bit clearer to establish, well, who are you? Or you can at least start changing actions. When you start to hide your emotions with food, you go, no, that's not who I am anymore. Or when you
Mm.
start to have an all or nothing behavior, no, I'm not an all or nothing person anymore. And then you'll notice you just by proxy start making better decisions by going, that's not who I am anymore. That's not who I am anymore. That's not who I am anymore. And that's also slowly stripping these parts of you from your identity because you're going, that's not who I am, new information. And then you make the action that goes against the old conditioning in the correct direction. That's the second part. And then it's pretty well game over from there.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really just have to decide who you want to become and who you don't want to be. And you have to force yourself into those habits, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you find how long do you find that that takes, or is it completely different? I'm
Every,
assuming based
every
on everybody.
everyone's different. A mentor of mine says you don't need more time, you need more awareness, but everyone's journey to that awareness is different. I've had
Hmm.
some I had someone my oldest client to date, she is 80, 7 decades of binge eating. But her binge eating was coming from her identity and 6 weeks her binge eating was gone. She literally went from 7 decades to 6 weeks. But I've had some people who might take 4, 5, 6 months to get there because it just takes them. Some people have further to go through. Some people are super receptive to this work out the gate. So, everyone's different because when it comes to
Right.
this inner work and the idea of letting, because for you to adopt a new identity, you have to let go of the old one. You can't, otherwise, it's like you have competing beliefs. If I'm good enough and I'm not good enough at the exact same time, like that's really hard. So a lot of it is comes down to how well we get the awareness and we ascend and let go of these old other parts. So
Do you think that fear is one of the biggest reasons why people hold on to our old identity and beliefs?
the mind can only measure what it will lose. It cannot measure what it'll gain. So, as in, even because your brain is only about self preservation, it doesn't give two shits if you're happy. So,
Mhm.
your brain only sees what you're going to lose. How much money am I going to lose? How much time am I going to lose? Oh, I have this. You may not even be aware of all the things you're thinking about losing. Like, let's say your mom was overweight and you're overweight, and then if you lose weight, you're going to lose connection to your mom. Like, there may be so many layers of the memories from childhood. What will people think, or the unknown of whatever. And so the mind only measures what it'll lose. It cannot measure what it'll gain. It can't see it. Your brain does not want to look at possibility. I actually just had my community, my collective, do this exercise. I've never taught this before, but the brain, it hit me out of nowhere the other day. The brain works in worst case scenarios, right?
Mhm.
All of us do. We catastrophize the worst case scenario.
Oh
We
yeah.
literally visualize it, emotionally charge it, and then think about it a dozen times a day.
Mhm.
But no one spends any time thinking best case scenario. But if we're going to dip into that side of the pool, we have to by proxy dip into that side of the pool. Like, for example, what would happen if I said, because, well, let me take a step back and say, for most people, they think like best case scenarios being like outlandish or not practical, but half of our worst case scenarios aren't practical at all.
Right.
But or stuff like this. Like, what if I said, hey, you losing your weight, fixing your relationship with food, healing parts of you, and regulating yourself is actually going to help you reach new levels of happiness, start a business that helps people all over the world and have millions of people watch your stuff, and then going to get you on some of the biggest stages in the world. That sounds pretty unrealistic, right?
Mhm.
That's what happened to me though.
Yeah.
I would have like right like I never would have envisioned me fixing my shit would have done what it did for me at all. Like, but I mean, I can't even tell you how many clients, even in our case with clients, I've had clients fix their relationship with food, stop binge eating, and realize their love for baking, and open up a bakery. Like, she never thought about that. Like, that would have, if I told her that on day one, hey, I know you quit baking because you can't control the binge eating, but we're actually going to fix your binge eating and and you're actually going to start a bakery and then ship worldwide. She would have laughed in my face.
Yeah.
But the brain could only see what she'll lose. Oh, how much is coaching? How much time am I investing in this? How much time? She wouldn't have seen what she's going to gain on the other side. It's the same thing here, but our brains operate in worst case because at least we can be protected. It's kind of like the analogy I've been using is you remember the older like animated movie, The Croods, from I think a Disney movie or a Pixar movie with the
Yeah.
cavemen.
Yes.
Your brain is the dad. The dad is like, we are not going to leave this cave. It's only danger out there. Yeah, there's some cool stuff way over there. There's the entire world, but we could also get hurt. We just need to stay in our cave and never come out because at least we will not die. But then the daughter's like, I'm gonna sneak out. Nope, I'm gonna go find. Oh wow, yeah, I almost died, but that was dope. And all this cool stuff happens. That's how your brain works. It can't
Yeah.
see possibility like that.
Mhm. And it sounds like a really miserable life to just like be afraid of everything at that
But
point.
at least you won't die. That's how your
Right.
brain works. Like, cool, yeah, you're not going to be happy, but I just don't want us to die, and we might die if
Mhm.
we're happy.
Yeah. Safety is the number one concern for your brain.
Hmm.
So I know you mentioned having a community, right? And having, obviously, you're a coach, I'm a coach. How important do you think it is to building a support system, having a community, having a coach when it comes to overcoming these things?
I mean, it depends. I mean, I think it's really important. Obviously, a lot of it comes down to what you prioritize.
Yeah.
If you want results that are faster, less friction filled, and without all the headache, is the fastest way is to go with someone. Um, like I mean, I literally for years now. I mean, some of the most amount of money I've ever spent is investing in other coaches and mentors or
Yeah.
things like that. It's because not everyone views it this way. I can always go make more money. I can't get my time back. The clients I talk to, they go, I wish I found you 20 years ago because that would have saved me 20 years of suffering. But they did it on their own, or they tried it on their own, 20 years of horrible memories of wedding photos and their kids watching every decision they made. Like there's a lot that's in there. Like, what's it costing taking longer?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, imagine, like, even like from a school system, like everyone's like, oh, I want to go to college so I can learn and develop and get my career as fast as possible in the most sustainable way. Well, why don't you just go learn it all on your own and avoid college? Well, okay, well, because you want to get there faster and have the degrees and all that. Well, it's kind of the same thing here, where if it comes down to what you want. If you want results that are streamlined, if you don't want to fall in the pitfalls and all the things, then you need to have some semblance of a support system, a community, or what have you. Otherwise, it's really hard to do. And this is why most people take their struggles to their grave, is because most people don't realize they only have so many. L's in their tank before they run empty. Most people, like if I have people tell me so often, they're like, this is my last shot. I'm done trying. If this doesn't work with you, I'm literally giving up. But everyone has, like, no one knows it in the moment, but everyone has a number, right?
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to fail X many times. So every time you try fall off, you're chipping away at like your hope, so to speak. And most people will hit a point where they're like, I'm done trying to do this. Because it goes
Hmm.
back to the self-preservation thing. Is if the last 100 times you've tried to lose weight, it doesn't work, your brain's like, what the fuck are you doing? This
Yeah.
hurts. Every time you fail, it hurts us. Why are you doing this? I think it would be better if we just were happy the way we are and stop trying to go find that on the other side. So every time we try and fail, it's actually chipping away at your hope somewhere deep down. But at the same time, it's also, this is the thing no one thinks about with struggle. The longer you struggle, the stronger the struggle gets. As in, every action is a rep, right? Think about practicing guitar. I played drums. I was never a guitar guy, but I suck at guitar, right? If you give me that guitar behind you, I would flip it over and smack the other side. Like I can't play. Well, if I wanted to practice guitar, it would be a shitty session to another shitty session to another shitty session, then they would start to sound less shitty, right? It's all that. But if and then all of a sudden then you have someone like Jimi Hendrix who's played his whole life and now it's Jimi Hendrix and can make beautiful music. But
Right.
most people have the same kind of reps with falling off. Every time we fail, every time we fall off, every time we start and we gain the weight back, that's a rep in the wrong direction. You are programming new conditioning every time you fall off. But some people are the Jimi Hendrix of gaining weight or the Jimi Hendrix of falling off. And it's no wonder we gravitate that way and sabotage that direction. So that's why it's not just like, oh, I'll try until I get the hang of it. It's like every time you fall off, you are literally strengthening your sabotaging muscles. You are becoming the Jimi Hendrix of weight gain versus
Mm.
we have to be careful with that because the longer we struggle, the stronger the struggle gets. It's why it's much easier to train a puppy to sit and go out and do the things it does versus getting a 15-year-old dog from the pound and then trying to teach it to go out and go to the bathroom and sit and all that. It's because it's got a lot of reps the wrong way. And it's hard.
Hmm.
It's not impossible, but it's harder to teach an old dog new tricks. So it's the same thing here.
Yeah. So, what advice do you have for somebody who's listening to this who might feel like they're stuck in this loop of sabotage and failure?
Um, Three things. Number one, if you can, work with a coach who specializes in it, who can fix it and give you an exact blueprint so you quit getting in your own way. Number two is the other two things that I mentioned with sabotage is get really clear on what your patterns are and then put that plan in place so you stop those patterns. And then number three is you probably need to check and rewrite your belief systems and your identity because that's what you're on autopilot sabotaging to. So instead of fighting uphill, why don't we just like take a helicopter to the top of the hill and call it a day? And that's what you would do if you just fix your identity. So
Yeah. So, take all the information that we're putting out in this episode and actually apply it into your life instead of just letting it sit in your brain.
hmm for sure.
So, if there is one thing that somebody could take away from this episode, what do you think it should be?
Mm, One thing is that you are not your patterns. Your patterns are your patterns. If you think you are your patterns, you'll never get on the other side of them because your brain's about self-preservation. But you aren't an all or nothing person. You have a pattern of all or nothing. You aren't a sabotager. You have a pattern of sabotage. You aren't a perfectionist. You have a pattern of perfectionist behavior when things don't go your way. So we can keep you and get rid of the pattern because if you think you're the pattern and we fix that, we get rid of you and your brain won't have it. But you have to understand that you are not your pattern. Just in the same way you could make car noises, but that doesn't make you a car. You could just because you binge eat doesn't mean you're a binger. You have a pattern of binge eating you picked up somewhere. So fix the pattern, keep you, and you call it a day.
I love it. Awesome. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, Jared, and I'm so excited that you were on the podcast today. But tell the people where they can find you, how they can work with you, etc.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. So, if you guys like this and you want to listen to my podcast, that's where I go the deepest on this stuff. It's called Dieting from the Inside Out, and it's on all platforms. Otherwise, hit me up on Instagram and TikTok is where I post the most amount of content at Real Jared Hamilton on both. And if you listen to me on here, just shoot me a message. I check all my messages, reply to all of them. And if you do want to see about what my programs look like, we could always have that conversation later. But otherwise, just follow me on those places. So.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all of Jared's information down below in the show notes. And everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in and go out and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.